Hey guys, it is October 30th, the second to last day of ADHD Awareness Month. It has been a while since we've done a My Life with ADHD vlog, not since like March, where I did a comparison of what it was like to grow up as a child who was diagnosed with ADHD versus what it is like to be an adult woman with ADHD. In the interim, Joseph and I have gotten married, we've kickstarted a book, and we have moved from Nashville, Tennessee, back down to Southeast Louisiana, and we're currently living in a rental in Norco while we look for a house. So a whole lot has happened this past year, like a crazy amount has happened. I am the ADHD one in the relationship. Joseph is the neurotypical one in the relationship, which is quite a flip because usually in the way media portrays it, it's the man who has ADHD and it's the woman who is basically his surrogate mother. But in this instance, Joseph is more my surrogate mother. And since we covered so much, and since I was kind of struggling to record this vlog, this is actually the third attempt. The neighbor's dog chased me inside. I asked Joseph if he would help me out, especially because a lot of what I want to talk about today, you were very heavily involved in, and I think it would be nice to get some other side opinion, some non-ADHD person opinion, as well as just some like partner in the thing opinion. So I want to talk about getting married, I want to talk about the Kickstarter, I want to talk about moving, and then I want to talk about how much of a struggle it has been to find focus after the move. So let's start with so the Kickstarter and the wedding happened concurrently. Which would you like to talk about first? And the thing is, both of them are processes that take a lot longer. They're like teeth, they're glaciers. There's a lot more under the surface. They take a lot longer before and sometimes after than you would think. Okay, so we're going to talk about the wedding first. All right. So I grew up Catholic, and we had a Catholic wedding. And it was a Catholic wedding in Louisiana while living in Nashville. So you would think that would be really challenging, but because COVID limited the scope of everything, it wasn't too bad. So before we got married, we had to go through premarital counseling, which I thought was a really good thing. I was really afraid it was going to be very religious in scope and therefore somewhat impractical, in that the wife obeys the husband, and cleanliness is next to godliness, and you really want to aspire to be a mother. But it really wasn't like that at all. It was pretty practical and pragmatic, I thought. A lot of the focus was on, what do you think your weaknesses are, what do you think your strengths are.
Yeah. They wanted to make sure we weren't going to get divorced and that we were going to raise our children Catholic, basically.
Yeah. And I liked how they approached the first part of that, because a lot of it was very cooperation and communication based, which is very different from my experience with, and this is not meant to be a religious vlog. I'm talking about my personal experiences, which is a very narrow scope. In general, what I had experienced growing up as a girl in the Catholic Church was that you get married and you listen to your husband, and that's a happy marriage. Is you get married, you pop out a bunch of kids, you're a good cook, you clean the house, you don't have a job, and you obey your husband. And that was that's not me. Sorry.
You missed the cooking.
I said you're a good cook.
Oh, okay.
So this was much more pragmatic, so I actually really liked it. Now, something I didn't like is I was very honest about the fact that I was ADHD, and this is something that we have to work on. And pretty much every time I mentioned it, I watched people's faces glaze over. The priest, the couple we were talking to, and the counselors, their faces just like they had not encountered that, and they didn't have anything to say to that. And that was frustrating. But I think that could be an area that we seek professional help if we need to, or if we want to in the future, because there are marriage counselors who specialize in ADHD, and that it does present, as you know, it presents some unique problems that I alone am not equipped to handle. Sure. And you're not equipped to handle because you're not a medical professional. So what else about the wedding do you want to talk about?
So, I mean, as you mentioned, we had planned on having a small wedding, but
like 80 people small. We both have large families, but not like a grand wedding. It wasn't going to be in a cathedral or anything like that.
So we ended up having to have almost a tiny wedding. I'm not sure if it would be
Isn't
considered
that 30
tiny.
people?
Yeah.
A lot of them were
I think it was
children.
31, 32, something like that.
No, because we had cancellations.
I know we did.
It was
We
like
also had
27.
additional people come. Yeah,
No, only your uncle. That was the only additional person.
sure. No, he was invited.
Yeah, you're right. No additional people.
Okay.
So it was a very small wedding. We did the invitations. I painted and drew something. Joseph laid it out. We ordered them from Shutterfly. We sent them out. We made a menu of the plate. So we had a reception, but it was not really a reception. It was just a dinner.
We didn't even call it a reception.
Yeah, at a restaurant for New Year's Landing. And they gave us like some set menu items that we could pick from. So that was actually really nice. We didn't deal with a caterer. I would have liked to have a band, but it's COVID, so we could not have a band. We didn't have a dance floor. We didn't have karaoke or any fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was basically like the wedding ceremony, and then people ate. There were no speeches. We didn't have a wedding party. I didn't have bridesmaids. Joseph didn't have groomsmen.
That was always planned, though.
Yeah, that was, and I mean, I have some sadness about that because theoretically, bridesmaids help the bride get ready for the wedding, and it was just me and you.
And that's a very practical thing, but I think most of the duties of a bridesmaid and a groomsman just complicates the process.
I don't know.
Of getting married.
For Lane's wedding, I did so much running around. I went. My friend got married a couple years before we did, and like I went to the dry cleaners to pick up her dress, and I picked up someone from the airport, and I arranged the bachelor and bachelorette party. Well, you helped me. I don't mean it to sound like I did it all by myself, but like I wasn't even the maid of honor. I was a bridesmaid, and I did a bunch of running around to help my friend out.
Some of that running around was caused by a wedding planner, which was added after the fact, though. So what I'm trying to say is having people who can do things.
The wedding planner who did not do any wedding planning.
Begets things being done.
Sure,
so
the bigger you go, the more
people
complicated.
with chef's hats, the more meals you're going to make. And I didn't want a bunch of meals to be made. I wanted something simple where people would enjoy themselves, basically.
And so my younger brother was an attendant. Joseph's younger brother was an attendant, and that basically just meant they walked us up the aisles. One of them held Joseph's ring. Devin held the ring I was giving to Joseph.
They read some things. Yeah, very, very, very self-contained. We didn't have a lot of flowers, so the organist does the bouquets for the church, so he handled that. And Joseph's parents made arrangements for a florist who was supposed to talk to me, but she cut me out about halfway through, which she couldn't get in touch with you.
She couldn't get in touch with me for an hour after I emailed her that we were literally in the middle of driving from Nashville to Louisiana. So she could have waited an hour. I think she knew where the money was coming from and was just like, I'm not going to deal with them.
She was trying to contact you for 2 days, but okay.
It was okay. It wasn't 2 days, but okay. It also wasn't that. It was like 2 weeks before the wedding, so it was close, but it wasn't like on top of it. And again, this is during COVID. She wasn't getting a lot of orders. So anyway, I didn't appreciate that because as an adult with ADHD, I don't like being treated like a child. And that, to me, that is infantilization, when someone just immediately cuts you out and just goes on to the next person. And I don't know if you guys
She had the instructions that you sent to her.
She did, but she still, like, after that point, she never contacted me at all. She didn't send me pictures of the finished bouquets.
Yeah,
she didn't.
My parents went by and looked at them, but they couldn't figure out how to send you photos.
She should have done that as the professional.
Sure, she should have.
She didn't follow up to ask how they were. We did not communicate at all after that point.
Okay.
So I didn't really jive. Well, I didn't really like that. But, and I'm bringing it up because infantilization is like one of my big triggers as someone with ADHD. I feel like people step in and treat me like a child a lot.
I don't think it had anything to do with ADHD.
No, it didn't, but I didn't appreciate that she went over my head.
So you're saying it's happened a lot in the past because of the ADHD, so because of that you're sensitive to it, even though this has nothing to do with ADHD.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yes. She didn't know that. I didn't tell her that.
Sure.
But I still didn't. I don't think it's very professional to do that either. Like, when I deal with customers, I don't do that, so I don't appreciate it being done. What else? Everything was pretty low key. The priest
Father Francis handled a lot.
There was some rigmarole the day of the wedding.
There was a lot of rigmarole the day of the wedding because an unnamed family member did not feel like getting dressed and heading out to the church that morning, and that meant me, the bride, had to get that person ready and like physically shove them out the door, and that made me late by 15 minutes. I don't know. The wedding was supposed to start at 2, and I got there at 2:15.
It was close to an hour.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm still sorry about that. Fine. We've talked about this a lot. So
also there was traffic.
There was and it was raining really bad. It was like hurricane level raining because there was flooding.
Yeah, but it cleared up during the wedding.
And there was a traffic accident while you and Kenneth were trying to get to our house to bring the flowers.
That's the traffic I was
referring to. No, there was traffic for us leaving Luling to go to Hahnville as well.
Sure.
It was just, we're lucky we got married because it was a mess of a day.
Our brother's suit didn't quite fit to his liking.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a small... It bothered him more than it bothered anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
No one would have noticed if he hadn't been obviously holding his sleeves in his hand the whole time.
Yeah, he was very self-conscious about it.
It didn't look bad. If he hadn't brought attention to it, no one would have known. My dress came from... So I went dress shopping one time, and then COVID happened. And I didn't like the dresses that were... I wanted something more retro. I didn't like the dresses that were for sale. I didn't like the quality of the fabric. I used to be a cosplayer, and I used to help sew my own formal wear, so I know what good fabric feels like. And for $1,000 up, it was not even good fabric. So I ended up ordering my dresses off of Unique Vintage. The first one that came was huge. It did not fit. It could not be altered to fit, so I returned it. The second one I ordered fit okay, but it wasn't even really good enough. If that sounds terrible. I'm really not a super picky person. I spent like $600 on my wedding ensemble total, and it just needed some work. So I had to find some pieces off the internet piecemeal and kind of try to cobble it together, and it looked nice. I can include a photo at the end of the video of how we looked. I thought we looked pretty cute considering. You look great. He had a nice tailored suit. I insisted that you get a suit tailored because I wanted everybody to see how handsome you are in clothes that fit you. And you look great. I looked okay. You look great.
You look good.
So, gosh, I think considering I'm someone with ADHD and I don't have the best planning skills, and the more complicated something gets, the more stressed out I get, I think our wedding went okay.
Especially since COVID-19 limited the scope severely, mm-hmm. So it was really, the planning was bare bones, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Which ended up working out.
The most complicated part, which would probably have been finding the venue, orchestrating the food at the venue, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, all that is put off until post-COVID-19, so we really didn't have to deal with that. Yeah, we haven't had
a reception or a ceremony yet.
We didn't have to deal with that while getting married, basically. Yeah. So that made it a very accomplishable task.
We got married at the church I grew up at, so that made it easier because it was a venue that knew me and knew my family. And because of COVID, there weren't a lot of people getting married, so we got married on a Monday by the priest who'd been the priest of the church since I was a kid. So that was pretty easy. The organist is like good friends with the priest, so that was basically arranged.
We made the wedding favors.
Yeah, I made the wedding favors. Joseph made the wedding programs. He used his parents' printer to print them. We did our invitations through Shutterfly, and then we mailed them out. We had a dinner afterwards at a restaurant called Furnier's Landing, and Joseph handled most of that, but it was pretty straightforward, right?
Very straightforward.
You called them, they were like, sounds good, here's some menu ideas.
I emailed them and said, this is what we're looking at, is that possible? They said, let's call. I called them, they said, yeah, everything looks good. We had some worries about people getting to the restaurant.
Oh, yeah, that was because it flooded. It's like off this like remote little road, and it flooded.
But luckily that wasn't a real issue. It was cumbersome, but not an issue.
Yeah, we were lucky in that regard.
So yeah, everything worked out. I think all in all, I probably spent much more time researching restaurants than we did actually setting up a restaurant.
And it was very affordable comparatively. It was like $700 to feed 30 people, which is not bad.
It was $25 a head.
And they had a choice of 5 different menu entrees, 2 soups, I think, or a soup and a salad. They had some options.
Yeah.
So that actually worked out really well because we didn't, when people were done eating, we could just leave. Like, we were not tied to cleaning up. We didn't owe a venue a deposit after that. He paid and we were done. So that actually worked out. If you're an ADHD person, you're planning your own wedding, smaller scope is excellent. The least rigmarole, and now if somebody else planning it for you, then whatever, just be there and enjoy the experience. But that wasn't our situation.
I mean, you say that, but
we had help. I didn't say
we
didn't have help.
Like, someone is going to say, well, this restaurant allows for a band to play, but that band needs 3 months notice, and you need to tell me what kind of band. So they're going to present all those options to you, and I didn't want to answer those questions. I didn't want someone to be pestering me.
Oh, like a wedding planner?
Once a day, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was like vehemently no wedding planner. And like after my friend's wedding planner, she doesn't really know this, but her wedding planner was really rude to all of the wedding party except for the bride. And even she was rude to the groom because the groom didn't really care for her either. So, I mean, after that experience, I was like, I don't want somebody bullying us into a bigger or a more ornate or a different wedding than what we wanted. Like when I went dress shopping, they being every store I went to kept trying to bully me into dresses I didn't want. And I even had sketches. And like when I went in, I would show them and be like, can you do something like this? Oh, yeah. And then they showed me nothing like what I wanted, but all twice as much as what I told them the budget was. And then they lied to my mom about what I told them the budget was. Because mom was like, $900, that's right at Becca's budget. And the woman was like, oh, she said she was willing to spend up to $1,200. I'd never said that. And that like really bothered me. I don't like when people lie like that.
Sure.
Okay, so that was the wedding. We're now married.
A good segue would be what happened after the wedding, which was...
We were running the Kickstarter while we were getting married. And that kind of happened by accident, actually, because we had planned on getting married in July, and then COVID happened, and we were in kind of a wait-and-see situation, and then we moved on to phase 2, where you could have small gatherings, so we were able to get married, so people were willing to help push for us to be able to get married and expedite things. With the Kickstarter, I'd wanted to do it in February, but because COVID happened, I said, let's wait and see what happens with COVID and people's finances and
also
people
just
going
wasn't
to work.
ready in February.
No, but boy, did we really push hard to get it ready. Dang.
The video came together in less than a month. The page came together in less than a week, I think.
No, I'd been picking at the page the whole time we were doing the video.
Yeah.
So that's another thing if you're someone with ADHD and you want to do a Kickstarter. And sorry guys, I talk about this a lot on my Kickstarter blog.
The actual segue I was talking about was as we were trying to leave, your car got out of commission, and that affected the Kickstarter.
Yeah. Well, we can circle back to that.
Okay.
So we were running the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter went live, like a week before we left for the wedding? Because I had like a solid week in Nashville where I was able to do streams and do events. We specifically wanted
at least 5 days before we left for the wedding, because the first
week
5
is very
days,
crucial.
Yeah, is incredibly important in your Kickstarter, along with the last 5 days.
And I do talk about this on my Behind a Paywall Kickstarter blog, so sorry. But if you're a patron or if you back the Kickstarter, you have access to that. So I'm not going to go super into detail about the actual planning nuts and bolts of a Kickstarter, but you're welcome to join my Patreon and you'll get access to that. It's only $2. So
it was a 30-day Kickstarter. Yeah. The biggest lull in any Kickstarter is in the middle.
Yeah.
Unless you get picked up by Bleeding Cool or whatever.
Comics Press.
Yeah, or even the Geek Media Comics Press. Then that can potentially cause a lot of work in the middle of your Kickstarter. But I would say 95% of comic Kickstarters, there's a huge lull in the middle. And
that's a known quantity. Like, that's well known among comic artists, is there's going to be a down period.
We figured we could safely ignore the Kickstarter in the middle for the wedding.
So Kara's set in Louisiana, and I wanted to use that as an opportunity to do some Louisiana-specific Kickstarter promotional content, like the Lilliputian tour and I wanted to talk about growing up in my hometown. But wedding stuff bled out really, like literally we spent 3 days looking for ribbon because we could not find just nice satin ribbon anywhere we went. We spent 3 days driving around looking. But we had planned for that lull. We knew that lull was coming. That wasn't really the problem.
No.
The problem was the other thing Joseph said. My mom hit my car. I've mentioned this a million times on the channel. And it seemed like small damage, like something that could be fixed in 3 days. The mechanic stretched it out into 2 weeks.
Yep.
And that's another infantilization problem. He would call my mother to talk about my car instead of calling me, despite me giving him my phone number. Because he legitimately forgets I'm 34 and has legitimately mentioned he thinks I'm 21. Because he's tried to set me up with his son who's 5 years younger than me. And was like, oh, Frankie Jr. might be kind of old for you. And it's like, I'm kind of old for him. So, I mean, I know I look young and I kind of act young. And I forgive him for that, but it is a pain point because it happens a lot.
Sure. And he kept on communicating with your mother. Technically, it was her insurance paying for it, so it makes some sense.
But it was my
car. But it was also your car.
Yeah.
So it's more important that you know the information because it's holding up your life rather than your mother who, other than having to entertain you, it's pretty irrelevant.
I got real ornery. I was real ornery. And Joseph, so we were staying at my mom's house. We had just gotten married. We were supposed to drive right back to Nashville and start packing. Yeah, most of the time though, because we did visit with your family a little bit.
And I visited with my family as well.
Yeah. But I was real, and I mean, I wasn't mad at her. I was mad at the situation because we'd had all these plans for the Kickstarter and all these things we wanted to do in the last week, and that had just been taken away from me because internet access in Luling is through Cox Cable, and it's not, the upload speeds are terrible. And so I wasn't able to do streams, and I didn't have a dedicated workspace, and the lighting wasn't very good. So it just kind of took all my plans and wrecked them. And as somebody with ADHD, one of the ways I manage my ADHD is by having a type A personality, being very controlling over my plans, having trouble with flexibility. I don't know if you guys struggle with that, but it's something I'm learning to deal with as I teach because kids, you have to be flexible with kids.
And we had a Trello board that I'd been building for a year
forever,
with all of the things that needed to be done for the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still accessing that basically on a daily basis to push the fulfillment.
Yeah, we're working on fulfillment right now. Yeah,
Becca can maybe include a picture of that.
I 100% plan on sharing the board with my Kickstarter and patrons if they want to see it. So again, you could join the Patreon, support what I do, and get access to that planning. And it would have worked really well. Okay, so it wasn't our ideas that failed; it was fate that kind of intervened. So, but we managed to hit that goal and then go a little bitty bit over it. So that's good. I was really hoping to hit 10K. I really wanted to do the Tanner map of like all the Lilliputian area. Like, I was really excited about that. So I'm bummed that we didn't get to do that. Okay, so wedding, Kickstarter, moving. Oh my gosh, I have so much stuff and I got rid of so much stuff. So Joseph and his younger brother Kenneth made the drive up to help with moving, and it took 2 weeks. I did not think it would, right? 2 weeks, or was it longer? I didn't think it was going to take 2 weeks, but it took 2 weeks.
I believe it was probably 3 or 4 days longer than 2 weeks, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Forever.
Originally, we had planned on spending about a month and a half slowly packing things up.
Working and packing and doing Kickstarter stuff.
The staying in Luling obviously affected that. That cut off 2 weeks. It might have taken 3 weeks. I can't remember anymore.
It was around 2.
We spent
because we were out by September.
All of our time packing. Certainly, Kenneth and I did. You spent some time.
No, most of my time, because a lot of it was organization.
You spent some of your time doing other things.
Yeah, well, I had to finish those things up, and then it was all packing all the time.
Sure.
And those were Kickstarter related things that I had to finish up.
Yeah.
That was I was gonna say it was a disaster, but it really wasn't. Nothing ended up irreparably broken. Kenneth was a huge help.
I can't even think of anything that broke.
We didn't have to hire movers. We got it almost all into a 16-foot U-Haul. Was that how long it was?
I think so, 16.
Joseph drove it, no accidents. I mean, it rained on the drive, but it wasn't that bad. We even kind of lucked out finding a place to rent because
came together like the day before
so quick,
we left.
and we really like this house, and we really like our landlady, so we got really fortunate in that regard. Joseph did a lot of the legwork, but I called a couple realtors, and none of them called me back. And then I was on like Zillow or something looking at houses to rent, and this one was represented by a realtor, and I called her, and no, it was another one I liked in Norco, and she showed me this one, and I liked this one a lot, so we ended up going with this one. And moving in took one day because all our stuff is still in boxes because this place is furnished and there's just nowhere to put our stuff, so we moved everything out of the...
It's an exaggeration. Firstly, it was at least 24 hours.
Yeah, a full day.
And secondly, because we got in at night, so we unpacked half of the truck.
We were up till 2.
No, we weren't.
How late were we up? I think it was 2.
Firstly, you weren't
we got
necessarily
pizza at midnight.
helping that much. Yeah, I know, but like we finished.
I'd been driving for 6 hours. I mean, he'd been driving for like 9, but I was tired. I'm not. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He just has a lot of energy, which is probably why we get along pretty well because I'm very high energy.
I wouldn't say I'm high energy.
So while I was clearing more space, Joseph brought up a really excellent point. How is this all ADHD related? Now, I feel like because I have ADHD, it literally colors every aspect of my life, from organizing, which took so long to clean up the studio and get it packed because it all had to be organized and I wanted to get rid of a bunch of stuff, to the wedding being smaller because I really do not have those long-term, like extended organization and coordinating skills that some people have, and I don't enjoy doing that either. Like the best I can do is throw a good birthday party. Like that's my level of focus for when it comes to parties. So to me, being ADHD colors all of these things.
Sure.
You know, the fact that I've amassed a hoard of comics, zines, and art supplies that had to be gone through before I could move. That's the impulsivity to an extent, and it's also the hyper focus, getting super focused on something to the point where I can't see anything else. Or buying myself things to self-soothe when I'm depressed. So to me, the ADHD colors all of it. Okay, so we kind of covered all the bases. We kind of recapped you guys. So, Joseph, what were your experiences getting married to and being married to and working with somebody who has ADHD?
It was fine. I think the biggest frustration is probably that we have different organizational techniques. Software developers notoriously are very organizational minded, partially because what we do is manage data, large amounts of data. It needs to be grokkable. It needs to be understandable by other people because other people are going to be looking at it. It needs to be interactable from multiple different sources because people use your tools in unexpected ways. So a lot of my job is taking information and allowing it to be accessible and understandable and organized and relatable and all these other things.
Also, multiple people often work on a project.
Yeah, I just said that.
Yeah.
So, because of that, software developers tend to use tools that are extendable and robust and customizable, and they've really figured this sort of thing out. I'm not saying other industries haven't as well.
But that's your industry, so you understand it.
But because we're software developers, we build tools for a living. It makes sense that software developers make really good organizational tools since they do a lot of that. So I use Trello for a lot of things. It helps stay organized. Previously, I've used Jira, which I liked a lot. Before that, I used Basecamp, which I liked a lot. It's kind of just a natural evolution in how people think about project management, task management, that sort of thing. It works incredibly well. I use it for some personal projects. We're using Trello to keep track of the Kickstarter, not necessarily any kind of calendar features inside of it, but mostly just for tasks. It mostly fits on 2 screens, I would say, and naturally I put the higher priority task towards the top, or things that I know are coming up or are going to need to be worked on.
You also put like good ideas as you think of them on Trello.
not necessarily ideas. I put task on Trello. It's not a. I mean, it can be a place for ideas, but there's better tools to organize ideas than Trello. For instance, for ideas, I just jot things down in Evernote. Usually because ideas don't need a whole lot of structure. Ideas don't necessarily have a status. Ideas don't have checklist related to them. Ideas don't have due dates. Ideas don't have, all these other sort of things. So you don't need a tool that's as powerful as Trello to just write down ideas. I mean, you use a Discord server to write down ideas. That makes sense. So Becca wasn't necessarily that hot on the Trello board.
We used to use Trello when we were paying a video editor to edit videos. So I do have some experience with Trello, but I mostly have experience. Oh, and for the Inkdrop Cafe Discord server and webcomic community, we used a Trello to keep organized. But I'm used to Trello as like a group tool, not for me personally. And I've shown them this. I like using planners to help me because the writing helps me remember, and then the visual I color code things, so it's got 2 points of.
I color code things on Trello. It does help.
Yeah, you can color code on Trello. I'm not. They have labels, but I'm saying like for me, there's a lot of physical element in my planning and a lot of physical element in my organization.
Definitely. Do you mean tangible?
Yeah, I mean like holding a pencil and writing the words is important to me.
Actually moving the cards around is an incredibly important part of Trello.
When I was in college, I would take copious amounts of notes, and then I would never need to really study them because writing the notes down and even doing doodles next to the notes made them sticky in my brain. Whereas if I'd read something 6 times, I might not retain any of it.
Sure.
So that is a big hiccup. I mean, to be frank, it's caused some fights because it can be very stressful working on a book together, especially for me. Like with me, I'm already kind of a stressed out, anxious mess of a person, and so I'll be working on something else, and Joseph will be like, hey, did you check the blah 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 blah, and I'll just kind of like flare up for a second because to me it starts feeling overwhelming, like, oh my god, I always have so much work to do, this project will never end.
That was definitely the theme, and still is the theme of the Kickstarter, that there is an endless list of tasks to do. And I'm used to that at my work. I have multiple Trello boards with essentially an endless list of tasks, and it's I'm constantly in triage mode essentially, which doesn't stress me out.
People break things and you fix them.
Like my employers, the people I work with, they all know that we're just in triage mode. So if you have something more important, you might jump the queue. But for the most part, I'm just your thing might not ever get done. Because it might not ever have a high enough priority, and as long as you communicate to people, that it's fine.
See, that is not.
I feel the same way about the Kickstarter. There are things that were pie in the sky that I would write down in the Kickstarter, thinking, oh, it would be nice if we could get around to this. There's maybe a 10% chance that we can get around to this, or like it's worth investing 2 hours of time in trying to get a Lexil rating of your book. But if you can't get that solved in 2 hours, then move on. There's more important things to do.
Whereas I come from like a very different background, to be real. Like I went to art school twice, so there's a lot of judgment and a lot of pressure and a lot of you got to do it right. And then I also do internet things, which makes me very vulnerable to other people's opinions. So if I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, sometimes that's okay, and sometimes people get really angry at me because I promised to do it when I just said I might do it at some point. So it is harder for me to let something go that I tell people I'm going to do because I am more visible and more vulnerable, and no one's ever showed up in my house. People have come up to me at cons and like lambasted me, and then I've been like, no, I'm not such and such artist, they're 3 tables over, I'm Natto Soup, and then they'd be like, oh, sorry. So I've gotten a lot more of people's vitriol in terms of like what I say I might do and what I'm going to do. So when it comes to the Kickstarter, because people have invested, they've put their money into this, they've purchased the book, they believe in the book, I want to give them the best book I can, which may mean I'm killing myself over it, which is not healthy either. Like, for example, Joseph mentioned yesterday that we talked about doing, like months ago, we talked about doing a printed interior cover. I'd completely forgotten about the printed interior cover. But frankly, that would make the book such a better book. It would look so much more like a bookity book. That now I feel like I have to do it because it's going to make it a better end product. So, like, for you, you roll out, beta build, and you're always able to fix things and fix bugs. But with books, we have to wait until a reprinting to fix things or to add things. So, for me, there's more of an onus to get those things done. And I wish I was more graceful in how I handled that kind of pressure, because when it's me and you, I really handle it, honestly, very poorly. And, I'm really sorry about that, honestly.
Sure.
Like, I don't like that. It turns into
much
that.
more
You're very even, like, very
of adapting
even
to
keeled.
different methods and different tools.
Yeah. I get very stuck in my ways.
But at the same time, I'm not going to waste my time. I don't want to have to ask you every other day what the ISBN number is for the physical volume of 7-inch Cara Volume 2. It would frustrate me. I can definitely do it, but every time I would have to ask you for it, I would say, why isn't this just written down somewhere that both of us can access it?
See, the first time that would happen, I would write it down somewhere we could both access it, because I don't like answering the same questions over and over and over again.
And yet that's what a lot of your systems are based upon. They're physical
calendars. I mean, because I'm used to working with myself. Like volume, okay, zines, I do a lot of zines, right? Zines are very quick, they're very immediate. If they have flaws, that's okay, because they are a very handmade, immediate meat space creation. People do not expect perfection from zines. I mean, one of the other names for them is ash cans, and it doesn't come from like, oh, this is trash, but it comes from like, this is quickly made. So I come from like making zines, making YouTube videos that often have imperfections. It came from
that concept of like repurposing something.
Yeah,
like an ash can could have been a tray that got repurposed to take ashes, or a literal can that got repurposed.
Oh, I meant the term ash can in terms of referring to like zines and minis.
That's what I mean as well.
Oh no, that's not the relation. The relation is like, this is so quickly manufactured and so cheaply manufactured that if someone read it once and then threw it away, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
So like, and even volume 1, like, even though I paid a friend to lay it out, all that friend did was drop my PSDs into an InDesign file. I did all of the everything, the designs of the page and the writing, the body, and volume 2 is so much larger in scope, partially because you're helping me out so much, we can do so much more, but also because we kickstarted it and it needs to be like a step up, you know. Like, I learned a lot from volume 1. It's important to demonstrate and utilize that knowledge, but that doesn't really have anything to do with ADHD, other than Becca's impulsive and doesn't like having to redo things 6 times. That really frustrates her.
So yeah, you also, I mean, when searching for apartments, I was using a Google spreadsheet to not
and I wouldn't
note down where places were, what amenities they had, all that sort of thing, just because I've looked for apartments before, and that's the best way when working with someone else, and even just for myself to organize all the information. I mean, it's like spreadsheet 101. And yeah, you were not so hot on that.
I did it, but I don't, yeah. I
You're
like making pros and cons lists.
Sure. I mean, that essentially is a pro and a con list.
One place
being
very
1,100 square feet and another being 900 square feet is a pro and a con. Yeah, it is very differently laid out than a pro and a con list.
Like, I do have organizational structures. They're just very different from yours, and they don't necessarily scale well for internet group use. Whether it's 2 people collaborating on a project using computers, or 20 people collaborating on a project using computers.
Or for really comparing a large number of things.
I usually try to mentally narrow it down to 2, and then I do the pros and the cons.
Sure.
Gladiator match.
You kept on getting things confused just while we were having conversations about them, and I would have the spreadsheet open, and I would say, no, you're mistaken. It's this one. Not that one that has a swimming pool or whatever.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
the
I'm
apartment
using that
complex
as an example.
Yeah, I was like, please do not think we're rich. We're not at all.
I think it makes more sense to have spreadsheets so you literally have all that information in front of you so that you don't get confused, so that you don't mistakenly get a place you don't really want. But yeah, so that was a little that is another example of kind of a downside with dating a person with ADHD.
I don't know though if that's an ADHD thing or if that's a different types of organization and we don't. I mean, they don't mesh together.
You fundamentally categorize and interpret things kind of different because of your ADHD.
That's true.
So I assume
that ties back into when you were like, "What does this have to do with ADHD?" And I was like, "Well, it colors my entire life. It is the filter I see the world through. So to me, it all has to do with it." But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And also just your inability to handle stressful situations.
A lot of that comes from, it is ADHD, but I had an alcoholic parent. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that also ties into like children of alcoholics. I'm not making excuses. I'm just differentiating. There are going to be ADHD people who deal well with stress because they didn't have that kind of a childhood. And then there are going to be children of alcoholics who deal poorly with stress because we grew up watching a parent have meltdowns over nothing, and we internalize that. So I just want to I'm not making excuses. I just want to make the clear distinction of I don't know if that's because of my brain chemistry or because of my upbringing.
You were also getting conflicting information. So I kept on telling you that you need to look at the forest and actually use this time to go through and reevaluate what you own. You need to get rid of the things that you're not going to use. Yeah.
Because I was ready for a new life.
Whereas your mother and the time frame was really pushing you to be
Kenneth,
very
too, because he kind of got on me you're spending so long going through these things. They all look the same. And it's well, I understand that they look the same to you, but they're very different.
We were impressing upon him that this is important.
Oh, for sure,
and we told him before he
even
was
in shove things in a box mode.
Yeah.
So that's another distinction, is that Joseph and Kenneth were literally shoving things in boxes. They were boxing books and things. No, I don't mean like messily. I mean, you were just in a box, it goes in the box. Whereas my task was to go through everything very minutely and get rid of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, well, the majority of our possessions are your possessions, so it is up to you to determine what art widget you're going to use. I have some inclination of what you use and what you don't use, but ultimately, I couldn't say.
I did get rid of a lot.
I'm not saying you didn't.
No. I'm telling them. I got rid of a lot.
That caused some consternation because I was telling you need to be very project-minded, I guess. Whereas your mother and the time frame were telling you to be very
task-oriented. Do it in a box.
Just throw things in boxes.
Yeah. And that was very antithetical to my wants because I wanted to get rid of a bunch of things. I wanted to be free to start a new chapter of my life. For example, I wanted to go and buy new clothes that actually fit and were flattering to me. So it was really important to get rid of a lot of the older stuff, especially because Louisiana is so much warmer than Nashville. A lot of the things I'd acquired in Nashville just to be warm during the winter, I really don't need those anymore. That space could go to things I would like instead of just I don't want to freeze my butt off at Handmade and Bound one more year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the organization, I'm good at it in short bursts, but this was extended over weeks, and I was burning out and very fatigued, and so I would go downstairs and be like, can I just throw utensils in a box? And Joseph would be like, you need to go upstairs and pack. So, we got it done, but I was very crispy burnt out by the end. And, that finally segues into our last point about focus after we moved. So after we moved, it took me a really long time to reestablish a work groove, to get the studio. It didn't take super long to get the studio in a working space.
In 2 days.
It came together very quickly, but it took forever for me to be able to find my focus and be able to work again. And even now, I still spend about half of my day forcing myself to sit there and try to work rather than just being in hyper focus and flow and getting work done. But that's the difference between my life has been disrupted and I'm reestablishing that life schedule, and girl, you just ADHD and you need some help because you can't focus.
Well, you also say you feel overwhelmed by the number of things you have to do for the Kickstarter.
I do, yeah. Well, it's the time frame. We'll get it done, but it's a lot. It's been a lot for a while, and I'm not please do not think I'm complaining. I am very grateful for the support I've gotten. Okay, but it seems like tasks just beget more tasks. Like I did these 10 pages of 4 coma comics, and that ended up making the book end on. You can explain this better than I can. It was still a multiple of 4, but it ended at a bad place for a book signature. So I have to now make 4 more pages that I never planned on making. I don't have anything.
Targeting Becca spec'd out 216 pages, so that's what we've been going with. That's what the book was laid out for. That's what we're getting quotes for. But then when she made the 4 comas, she made more than she had originally planned. So that pushed the book up to like 220 pages, I think, which
is a bad
doesn't
place for
fit a signature.
Yeah,
signatures need to be at least 16 pages. Ideally, you would shoot for 32. Maybe it's at least 8. I forget. Regardless, it needed to be 224 pages. Otherwise, that would just be blank pages in the book.
So that means I got to make content
for offset printing
that I didn't plan for.
POD. Yeah, so that required producing some additional.
And pages. I'm not complaining about it. But it's still like, oh, here's new work. That your work generated more work. So that seems like such an ADHD person
planning
thing.
Is so important.
Yeah, that's probably why. Well, you can only know so much, and I'm really fortunate to have somebody who is so. You're very intelligent, and you enjoy looking things up and doing research, and you have a mind like a steel trap, and you keep good notes. I'm very fortunate to have someone like that, because if it were me doing volume 2 by myself, it would be a lot like volume 1, except with a Kickstarter behind it. More bare bones than what it is now. It's much more fleshed out, and I'm proud of it, and I'm looking forward to being able to send it out to people so they can enjoy it. This is not meant to be like a plug for that, but it has been such a big part of our lives for the past few months, and is going to continue to be a big part of our lives for the past few months, that not talking about the Kickstarter, which segues so much into being an artist and being self-employed and working from home and having ADHD and having a partner who can help, that it would be a disservice to not talk about the Kickstarter, because it has been such a big part. I mean, it would be like if we had a kid and I didn't talk. I mean, when we do have a kid, I don't plan on really showing them on YouTube or anything like that. But it would be like never talking about our child, you know.
I mean,
even in vlogs.
The good news is, not to distract you from focus after moving, but the good news is, I don't think, other than reducing the scope of our wedding, I don't think anything unexpected happened for the Kickstarter.
Even reducing the scope of the wedding wasn't that.
I mean, I guess us having to stay in Louisiana for 2 more
ding,
weeks
ding, ding. Yes.
Was unexpected,
and then moved so quick because it totally
which isn't something we could have planned for.
Yeah.
We could have prepared for it better by packing more beforehand.
Sure.
Which I'd been encouraging Becca to do. There wasn't a whole lot that I could do by myself.
Yeah.
Because Becca needed to go through so many of her things.
Yep.
I did go through a lot of my things and get rid of a fair number of them. But again, that amounted to very little. So, I mean, I think the ahead of time planning definitely helped out a lot.
Yeah, this could be so much worse. Honestly, this is like a best case Ontario vlog, because even though some things went wrong, I mean, that's life. Life happens. But so many things, we got married, we had a Kickstarter, we were able to move, we're going to print the book. Like, those are all successes. And it was white knuckle a lot. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm not pretending like it was easy. It was very hard.
To the wire, and was a lot of work. But, I mean, it all kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
And not because we got lucky, but
there was a little luck.
Because we spent so much time
But
planning.
we were also realistic about our scale. And we were realistic about who we are as people. And that's really important. And that's something I try to be, which is why I will tell Joseph, like, I have trouble with that. I can't do that because of XYZ. It's not me making excuses. It's me trying to be realistic with who I am and what I can accomplish. Because I feel like if you know, like, let's just talk about employees. If you know your employees and you know their weaknesses and you know their strengths, you can best utilize those, and everyone can be happier. They can do their job better. They don't get scolded. You get a product you can use out of them. And that's the same how I think about myself as a working artist, is I have to be realistic about, okay, so for example, there's like a little craft fair tomorrow, and Joseph was like, well, you could probably still buy a table. And I was just like, absolutely not.
I specifically said I didn't think you would want to. But I said theoretically you could.
And I was like, no. Like 3 years ago, I would have felt so guilty for some reason. Like, Becca's not doing enough. Becca's not.
Even though she's under pressure to fulfill her Kickstarter, she's not
doing enough.
Some random event during COVID-19.
Yeah, right. That she just found out about and didn't prep for. So me saying, like, I can't. Like, I don't think I'd make any money from it. I don't think I'd be happy doing it. I would rather if we're going to go, us go and just see if it's any good, than go, like, buy a table and be tied to the event and then be miserable.
While other things suffer.
Or even if it went well. That's still something I hadn't planned for. I don't think I would make more than $100. And I have other more pressing things to do. Even recording this vlog is more important than sitting in the cold at a table.
Yeah, this is very little for a wedding that we hadn't considered doing before we ended up doing it. For the Kickstarter that we hadn't considered doing before we ended up doing it.
We planned
so
the Kickstarter
all of this
for a while.
was in the realm of possibility. I would say one thing that did change was we weren't sure if we were going, how much of our things we were going to use when we moved.
Yeah, we didn't know if we were moving into a furnished place or an unfurnished place.
We've ended up using a bizarre set of our things because we didn't think we were going to move into a furnished apartment. Or at first you wanted to, you strongly wanted to move into a furnished apartment, found out that it's a bit of a scam.
Depending. This one isn't. This is weird. No, this is weirdly wholesome.
Right.
Weirdly worked out for the positive.
We ended up in a non-standard apartment.
Most apartment complexes that offer furnished apartments, they're renting through Aaron Furniture. So just keep that in mind, okay? It's not... And then you're paying on top, like a lot on top of that.
And one thing else I wanted to mention as well, you mentioned employees as an example. So you talked about consternations regarding your ADHD.
Yeah.
I think your lack of desire to request that Kenneth, my brother, help with things put some extra burden on me because not only was I having to keep the global picture of when does a truck get here, how do we find apartment, so I had to constantly switch between like a general and a soldier sort of view, whereas you were mostly general, like let me organize these things. It's somewhere in between a general and a soldier what you were doing. You weren't necessarily switching roles that often. I was having to switch constantly because I was in charge of communicating with the apartment people, and I was in charge of organizing how we move the things and when we were going to move the things and making runs places, and also giving my brother Kenneth tasks. Which,
I mean,
understandably, he wasn't sure what to do. He didn't live there. He didn't know what we were going to use while we were packing. He didn't know priorities.
Let's be real fair, okay? So, I have a one-track mind, often. So, I was very focused on, like, organizing and packing my little realm. And I had difficulty thinking of other things besides my little realm that I could ask him to do. When
he could have helped with your realm.
I did ask him to, and he tapped out real quick because he was like, I don't even know what these things are. I don't know what you're looking for. And I respect that because he's a photographer. He that is his world. Like, if you put lenses in front of me, I wouldn't know. What sort of things
were you asking him to do?
I wanted him to swatch markers so I could refill them and pack them.
Oh, okay.
And it was just like, I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know what's wrong with you. And I understood, like, this is way out of his depth, and it would take a long time for me to explain it.
It seems like a bizarre thing to ask him to do that's related to packing, but I understand how it's related to packing. It was a menial task
that needed to be done so I could pack all of those things.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm
or throw away he wasn't capable of doing that.
It was, well, he tried. But it was like, he got frustrated very quickly because he was like, I don't know what you're looking for. Can I just go do something else?
Sure.
Which was... Again, that was fine. I'm not complaining, but I'm saying I did try to give him some of the tasks that I was doing that were just like, this is, once you know how to do it, it's very menial.
Yeah.
And I underestimated my own experience and overestimated how easy it would be for a lay person to pick it up and do it.
Sure.
So it wasn't that I didn't try to give him tasks. It was that he and I quickly realized that any tasks that I could assign him besides pack
out
books.
Of his scope.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what often happens to me. That's why
I asked him to pack the china that I had, and he like immediately was like, I don't want to do that because it looks like it's not valuable, but it is antique. And I don't want it to break. I don't want to be responsible for it breaking.
Yeah.
And I understood that that was his pain point. And I was like, that's cool, dude. I'll pack it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So part of it was me and him understanding what his comfort zone was. And I wasn't going to ask him to go out of his comfort zone.
Sure.
Even if something had broken and I would have been okay with it, I wasn't going to ask him because I would feel guilty if I packed something of someone else's and it broke, even if they were like, oh, I don't care, it's fine.
Back to the lack of focus thing, do you think it's the space itself, or do you think it was all the rushing beforehand, or is it...
Can it be everything?
The disparate tasks that you had going on here?
It was like everything, really. It was... So, I have a hard time starting new tasks. I am excellent at continuing the same task into infinity, which is why I never finish things. That's why I'm still doing blogging of some capacity. I can't finish tasks, but I can continue them. I can work on them. But I have a really hard time starting new things. So we had gotten married, so that was done. The Kickstarter as a discrete unit of online promotion was done. A lot of my stuff was kind of packed up, and I was just mentally burnt out. And I'm still like dealing with burnout, but I was super burnt out after we moved because we had been driving back and forth to Louisiana a lot. My mom's breast cancer surgeries had happened. I flew for one, and then I couldn't make another one because they scheduled it like way too quick. I couldn't make that drive by myself. And then we drove down to get married, and then we drove up to pack, and then we drove down to move. So I was just like mentally spent and just very uninspired. I think what really helped is like just going and doing stuff with my family, like just messing around, you know.
Which is funny because you seemed the most stressed when you were going and doing things with your family.
I guess it stresses me out in another. I guess I have like all these little gauges, and it might deplete one gauge, but it fills up another. Hey, how about this? It stresses me out so much that all I want to do is get back to work.
Sounds like a very healthy way to get yourself to work. Just getting in an abusive relationship.
It's not, well,
I'm exaggerating.
Yeah, please don't.
And then all
don't
you'll
joke
ever
about
want
that,
to do
though.
is work.
No, I know, actually, legit, I know a lot of people.
I mean,
that is their life, and they escape
children
into
in school,
work.
right?
Yeah,
like,
that was me as a kid.
Yeah.
Is I grew up in a very abusive environment, and so I hyper focused on school because it was the thing I could control.
Yeah.
Yeah, and work when Daddy was sick, all I did was make art and see my dad because the making art allowed me to think about what was going on, but also be detached from it. So, yeah, anyway, this was a very long vlog, but I'm only doing My Life with ADHDs now like twice a year, so hopefully. And some people like my longer vlogs. Some people are like, I love just putting it on and listening while I work because it's like hanging out, and I'm like, I mean, to be fair, we do listen to the once a month game dungeon 4-hour streams. And we do listen to Techmoan's 3-hour Patreon. Some of them are 3 hours. Okay. I love those.
I thought they were like an hour.
Where
and 10
he just
minutes.
talks about all the projects he's been working on. So there are people who like super long vlogs. So anyway,
advice: keep your wedding small.
Keep your wedding small.
Plan out your Kickstarter
if you are doing
6
your
months in
Kickstarter,
advance.
the problem was not, in my opinion, the fact that we were getting married during the Kickstarter. That wasn't the problem. It was the unexpected car accident. So if you're doing a Kickstarter, maybe don't plan on driving to or fro anywhere for a while. And regarding moving, I feel like we just really lucked out with moving. Like I hesitate to give advice because it's like,
I mean, getting
lucky.
Get
someone to help.
Definitely helped, but was also
dividing
slightly
tasks.
stressful.
So if you're ADHD and you're like me and you have all this stuff you have to go through, it is so helpful having other people who can just shove plates into boxes so that you can focus your time on that really boring minutia. And most of our stuff is still in boxes too, and I feel like that was a good move for us
Because
we want to buy a house.
I don't even know if
soon.
it was most. If it is most.
I got a closet that argues with. It's full of boxes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, know yourself, know what you're capable of. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't look at other people's weddings or other people moving or other people. I mean, you should look at other people's Kickstarters, but don't look at like somebody's bonkers $100,000 game Kickstarter.
Don't try to emulate a single Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Pick the good things.
I think my advice is like pick 3 you really like.
You are capable of doing from other people's Kickstarters and do those.
And be realistic with yourself. Can you do it? So like some of the rewards for the Kickstarter, in fact, all of the rewards for the Kickstarter are things I have done before. So like the wooden charms, going with a company we've worked with for a really long time.
The handkerchief.
Those are stretch goals.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of research on those, and I also know people who have worked with that. And they're still very feasible things.
Sure.
It's not, I'm not like trying to make a board game as a stretch goal, and I've never made a board game. Like all of my rewards are things I've done. Coloring pages, an activity book. I mean, I design classes for kids, you know.
Well, you haven't made the certificate, but you've made things like that before.
Yeah. Yeah. The wooden charms, I've worked with that company dozens of times. Postcards, I've ordered postcards. I mean, I do Christmas cards every year.
Though.
Oh, I've never done a vlog before. Never, ever, never, ever. You're right.
I gotta get back to work.
Yeah, I know. I heard the ding. Thank you for like chatting. I feel like even though this is still very ADHD and somewhat disorganized, sometimes when I do these vlogs, I literally have to make a list and go into it with a list, and because I want to stay on topic. But for this one, I really just wanted to kind of catch them up with all the things that had happened, how my ADHD affected that, how it affects our relationship for better or for worse, like a State of the Union address, because I don't really have anything specific. I mean, I think I could do an ADHD and Kickstarter vlog as a standalone vlog.
Probably. And
maybe even a Kickstarter and getting married vlog as a standalone vlog. But I thought it would be good to do like, because it's ADHD Awareness Month. Did you know that? I found that out. Well, Takata Pharmaceuticals has been talking about it all month, but in a very like buy our Ritalin kind of way. So I just ignored it, and then I googled it this morning, and I was like, no, it really is. And I was like, me and ADHD, and I didn't know that.
And ADHD.
And ADHD. So, anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I look forward to doing that ADHD Kickstarter vlog at some point and doing in fact, I'm like working on the blog post where I talk about planning and scheduling and creating events for the Kickstarter. So I'll probably record the ADHD Kickstarter vlog after I've done that because I'll have had all my notes together.
Yep.
Anyway, if you enjoy ADHD content, if you're looking for some more, please check out my Life with ADHD playlist. I'm sure there's stuff you guys enjoy. If you guys have any questions about my personal experiences with ADHD, let me know. Ask them. I'm down to talk about them. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I apologize for the lighting kind of shifting on us as we recorded. I was outside. We're now inside. And I'll see you guys again really soon. Bye, guys.